Greetings, Railway here. Yeah, just a quick casual thing, because I, in the recent days, have noticed that there are many people out there with, struggling with suicidal stuff and everything, and I just want no one to really end their thing, because it is very easy to believe that there's no hope, that there's no way that we could kind of heal. But let me tell you something. Struggling with mental health doesn't make you any less of a person. And let me also tell you, I've been through this stuff. All started in end 2022, when I started realizing that life I was living was overly repetitive and didn't really fit me anymore. That I was already growing out of it, but I was still legally stuck in it, and I still am. And it's just, it caused me to really hate my life, hate myself a lot. And I realized the one thing that caused me to get stuck in these thoughts was the fact that I was pressuring myself to appear in a certain way, to appear healthy, to appear alright, so no one would ask and throw the arrows at me, so to speak. And I'm still struggling with mental health. The one thing I could get over is suicidal thoughts. They're still there, impulsively, occasionally they're still there, but they no longer run me, which is great. And by the way, this is an important distinction. The first step you need to take is not to eliminate the thought, fight it as if it was strictly enemies, but rather just don't let it run you. The thoughts can be there, but don't let it run you on autopilot. Maybe these thoughts are telling you something else. Maybe they're trying to tell you how terrible your life is, and that you should please get yourself a different way of living. Maybe all it is telling you is to start living life differently. For me at least, that was ultimately the core of being driven by these thoughts. It was the fact that I wasn't really taking them seriously, trying to repress them, eliminate them. I know, no, it doesn't work. No, it doesn't work like that. And really, let me say it bluntly, I'm here to save your life. I might be the one, who knows. It's no nonsense of wanting to praise myself, yeah, I saved that and that person. No. I'm doing it because I know the pain. And another thing that's causing me pain recently is the fact that I was trying to hold this image. I was holding an image of myself in front of me without really noticing, ever. I always thought I had to be like the smart person, the person who dominates everything, the person who I know is always jolly, always happy, like always positive, but the truth is that's not me. I was really being the exact opposite of what I am actually naturally like. Naturally, I'm like, I think it's best described with like the rabbit I have in my profile picture. I'm like this kind of person who is like, yeah, generally like, tends to be like jolly, energetic and stuff, but also someone who can be very serious. I can also be like on edge. I can also be like, I don't know, I know how to call it, like I would call it kind of sinister, but in the sense that I'm like yeah, it's basically eyebrows point inwards, smiling, like oh yeah, and I know, uh, it sounds so simplistic, but it's kind of like basically doing like silly stuff like for the sake of like being like authentic, for the sake of not repressing all the negatives, because the truth is we all have to deal with a shadow. And really my personality used to be by nature to show that the shadow as much as I show my light. Problem is I was misunderstood for being like that, for not repressing it, and they told me to just get rid of that part of me. When I was 13, I remember becoming afraid of becoming a different person just for evolving and moving forwards. I thought I was not being true to myself if I ever developed. So I coped by never doing it. I was always developing the front, the image that I show other people of me, but I was never really working on myself. And it was for too long, until poor mental health gave me no other choice but to work on truly me. And I also realized that I unfortunately have developed a really, really strong ego. Like in the sense of, yeah, I'm the best, I dominate, I know it better anyways. And by the way, the thief of all development and introspection is the word anyways. Anyway is it eliminates all drive to ever change and develop and improve. I remember my parents always saying, yeah, I was smart enough for this and that anyway. Or also in the negative, yeah, you can socialize anyway. They would always use the word anyway as if the way I was back then would necessarily be who I would stay for the rest of my life. They were projecting onto me the idea, they were projecting onto me their own inability to ever change and introspect. They were projecting it onto me, and successfully, I have a very hard time to ever, like, when someone tells me, yeah, could you please be a little bit, I know that's like obnoxious or something, for instance, just as an example, I wouldn't be able to act upon that feedback because for some reason there's always this part of me saying, no, 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 you are perfect, you're doing great, you're a great guy. And I feel the fear of, if I am not a good person in the sense of acting ethically, in the sense of being developed, then you have no value. This is the fear I have. It is the fear of having no value, of being less of a person, just for not being a good person. And I want to put this straight. Not being a good person doesn't mean you're not a person at all. Or like human, or however you want to call it. And because we all have inherent dignity. And you don't have less dignity just for being a bad person. Because A, we all start somewhere. B, ultimately we don't want to be bad people because it affects our lives negatively as well. And C, many people try to change but can't. I more and more think that my parents are these kind of people who desperately try to change but never can, because they're afraid of admitting they did wrong before. Unfortunately, I'm the same. I've become the same. I've become exactly the kind of person I was always afraid to become. A person who would be like unable to change, unable to develop, because for so long all I've been working on was my image in front of others. And also, I only know myself in the eyes of other people. At least it was the case for a very long time. Because I was like, yeah, you need to fit in. You have, as for context, I have Asperger's. My parents were always ashamed of me for having this condition. And they were always like, why can't you just be a bit more normal? Or why are you so picky? And, especially when it came to picky eating, this was always a huge topic back in elementary school, where my schools were generally open, but because my parents insisted so much that I should become more normal, my school was pressured to implement that. And it was terrifying. It was just terrifying. And I remember I despised trying out new food, because every time I try to do so, in the back of my mind there's like this idea of, yeah, if you tried and you like it, then you were wrong all along. Then the bad thing these people did to you was rightful, and that cannot be. So don't try it. Don't take the risk of you liking it. And I'm confusing two things here. Too often I am not distinguishing between two things. One, the message underlying the action, and the kind of action. You may, for instance, let's just say you want someone to, let's just say you want someone to become well academically and write the good grades and everything as a parent. You want that for your child, let's just say. And it may be a good thing per se. It may send the good message, but how do you send the message? Because some parents, and I know this from my own experience, are just going to pressure their children and say, hey, get the grade or else. And that is the wrong way to act. There is the action and the thought. And these are two completely different things. And analogously, going back to my picky eating example, if I try out something and wow, I do like it after all. Well, it may confirm the thought, the rightfulness of the thought, but not of the action. Or also, I remember this is also what the kind of trauma work I did for the events happened in the age between 10 and 12. You should definitely check out Temp 4 and 5 for more info, but essentially I realized that the people who were bullying me, they were acting terribly, but some of the points they made were actually right, and I was blind to it. And one of these points was that I was always making fun of them. It is true. I used to make fun of my classmates for being less smart than me. At least supposedly. Because my ego was so boosted also by the narrative that my mother brought me, that let's just say I was a hard person to get along with. And basically unlikable. After the traumatic events, I had a long time where I assumed that I was unlovable. And no, I didn't really feel loved by my parents either, because they blamed me for having allowed myself to be mobbed by not fitting in, by being as, in take marks, stupid as they anticipated me to be, in their own words. And yeah, it's a really hot topic. And what does this have to do with suicidal thoughts and phases? A lot. It has to do a lot. When I look back at that phase, when we're suicidal, we tend to run away from a big monster behind us. But the absurd thing is, we are running away from something our entire lives, only to realize once we turn around our head for the first time that we are running away from ourselves the whole time. Because many of us are told that you have these flaws, thus you're a bad person. So we think oh, okay, then I should forever hide it and suppress it and hate this person, this part of me. What happens is, the love towards yourself becomes conditional. And we always treat other people the way we treat ourselves. And actually, this is kind of the reversal of the golden rule. The golden rule states that you should treat other people the way you would want yourself to be treated. It isn't wrong, but you also need to consider the inverse, the reverse, and say, I should treat myself the way I would like to be treating other people. Because with this shift in perspective, it is easier to see in which ways you're treating yourself poorly. Maybe the reason you no longer want to be alive is that you're being too harsh to yourself, worrying about too much. And I can say this as an overthinker. I can clearly say this. I worry about too much to this day. And also, going back to this ego stuff, I noticed that the reason I feel so pressured at school is that I was holding a mask the whole time. I thought, yeah, I guess that was just me. And I guess that was how I interacted with people. No. I was faking. I was seriously faking. And the only reason we would ever have to fake is to fit in. And the problem with society these days is, for everything, we just want people to fit in. Rather than saying, okay, we appreciate the diversity, we appreciate the differences there are between people, and I guess these differences are there and it's great. We say, hey, halt, unacceptable, and be like this or else. And this is the problem I have with morality as it is understood these days. The problem with morality is that it breaks one of the fundamental principles of being free. And it is plurality. Saying, okay, for many things there are multiple right ways to do it. There are multiple acceptable ways. And all these ways should be accepted rather than restricting everyone to the one and same path. We let everyone go their own path. It's like, how I like to imagine it is, we as humanity are stuck in a cave. Imagine everyone, the whole world is stuck in a cave. And we're trying to get out of it. Now, the question is this. Which approach are we more likely to be successful with in terms of exiting that cave? Is it A, everyone goes the same path, and everyone's like forced into that same path, and this is the right path, follow me? Or isn't it B, everyone takes their own path and we spread and split and tell each other about these paths? I mean, look, of course it's B. That is the right answer. But then we must ask ourselves, what is the real answer? How are we currently responding to this question? And currently, far too many systems and social structures are based on approach A. Everyone goes the same path. And honestly, if you are suicidal in this society, let's be real, you are the sane one. You are sane for realizing how terrible life is as it is right now. Yeah, that's right. You are the healthy one. And this is what I also needed to realize when I was in such a phase. That I was the healthy one for realizing how absolutely terrible my life is and was. And this perspective can get you out of actually going to kill yourself. But these suicidal thoughts should be reframed in the context of your surroundings. When oftentimes, more often than not, suicidal thoughts approach when either we are misunderstood and discriminated, or when we feel a lack of control of our own lives, or when we lose a lot. For instance, many people in grief may experience suicidal thoughts. And you can see this, for instance, with elderly pairs, and when eventually one of the two dies, then the other one is like stuck in a void, not really knowing what to do with their own lives, which does show a lack of individuality, but is also a natural stage of grief. Now, it is unhealthy to stay in that phase forever, which is what unfortunately many people end up doing. But it should be a phase. It should happen for a while, because ultimately it is in the most intense moments of our lives that we realize the most important things. Take it like that. Or, oh, you're suicidal? Okay. Kind of great, I guess, because then you will have the pessimistic outlook on your life that you'd always been missing. See it this way. I realized that I needed a bit more pessimism in my life. And these days, my approach to life is hope for the best and prepare for the worst. That is my personal approach to life. It has worked wonders for me, by the way. And it has helped me out of actually becoming suicidal. It was like, yeah, I mean, I hope for the best, so I'm not like, oh yeah, it's gonna be absolutely terrible, it can only ever get worse. Ugh, I guess I'm gonna die then. This is how I used to be. If this sounds familiar, by the way, maybe my approach can help you too. I say, okay, maybe it will turn out well, but just in case it doesn't, let me prepare myself. This is a much more pragmatic approach and much more reasonable. It is also much closer to reality. Yes, bad things can happen, but it's not the only outcome. It's not the default outcome. It doesn't have to be like this. And this is my message to people who are currently struggling with suicide, and I hope you make it. I really desperately hope that you will stay alive, because let me tell you, as my suicidal urges were starting to diminish, which was when I started realizing just how much of a pain my family was for me, which was a moment where I was punishing myself less, where I was being less harsh towards myself, because I realized the only reason I was being like this was my education was the same way. I didn't know anything different. And so, just by being nicer to myself in this way, I managed to get out of it. At least for me, it worked. And it was also this realization, hey, these people here, I've had to deal with my entire life, they are actually terrible for me and my sanity. Maybe the reason you're suicidal is also people close to you who you assume to be good for you, but may actually just be draining your energy. I just leave it here I just throw it into the air. Take it or leave it. And also, I was like realizing, hey, maybe life is worth it once I get rid of these people. Turns out it is. I was right. I'm now sitting here. I have been outside of my parents' household for almost 2 months at this point. And it's great. I absolutely like it. I want this to be the default way of living. Independent, on my own, and I only relate to the people I choose to be with. And nothing more than that. Just with the people I relate with, I talk and interact. Because previously I was forced to have certain relations. For instance, I mean, let's be real. At school, for instance, you're kind of forced to interact with someone because otherwise you have no idea what to do for the rest of the day. At least for me, it was the case. And also, we are all forced to interact like with our families when we are young, which for many people is unfortunate. And like for people like me as well. And yeah, I want to talk a bit more about how much it turned out that I was actually a terrible, terrible person. And the reason I couldn't admit that I was a bad person was because my thought process was, hey, if I am a bad person, then I shouldn't be alive anymore. And this is a remnant of my suicidal phases, age 15, 16. Remember, that is relatively recent. I've turned 17 last September. So it is still pretty recent. And in fact, around the time where I was distancing myself from my family, where I was in the last few days of being with them, I had another such phase, actually. And it lasted until the very moment it was certain that I would no longer have to interact with them ever again in my life. And by the way, I'm glad that this offer that I'm taking right now is even possible. Like, thank you, Germany, I guess. But anyways, don't be so harsh on yourself and go with your flow. For instance, I had to learn to become less harsh when it came to my day-night rhythm, because my day-night rhythm is inherently and by nature irregular. That's just what my rhythm is like. I had to learn to be less strict with the times. It took me a while. And there was also this part of me saying, hey, look at the clock, it's that time, go right now to bed. Or wake up right now, stand up. It's early. And now I don't take it like that. I'm like, look, if I have the energy, I have the energy, and if not, I don't. I mean, what am I gonna say? This is kind of damage that strict parenting can cause. Once parenting becomes too strict and controlling and in a certain sense insane, we as children start to treat ourselves the same way. And in Term 5, I realized that it was up to me whether I would stay just the reflection or extension of my parents, or whether I would become a person of my own. The video is called I Am Love and So Are You. And this is my message today again. Yeah, you can. I'm sure you have some way of being helpful for other people. I am very sure. And even if not, live for your own sake. And I mean, you only get one chance. I mean, if it turns out you didn't like it, I guess you only had to go through it once. If you did like it, it might be a bit sad that it's only once, but at least it was once. You had the chance, and you used it. And either way, I think there will be little to no regret for not committing suicide. I realized that the guilt that comes with being suicidal is greater than with not being. And I have a really hard time like changing, and my mind's like, no, please stay like this. It's absolutely great. You're awesome. Keep going. You're acing it. Maybe I'm not, but I'm learning. Like, I need to realize, even when people judge me, like, hey, why aren't you like this already? I'm on the path. I'm on my way. Hey, why aren't you like this and that? I'm trying. Or maybe you're not interested. I mean, that's up to you. And if we had our lives figured out, then there would be no life left. Life is inherently something we have not figured out. And this is also about dealing with the unknown, dealing with the uncertain. And we just want everything to be certain, 100%, perfectly planned and safe. And again, for context, I have Asperger's, and it is depending on who you ask, it might or might not be like in the autism spectrum. And in that spectrum, a typical property of people in the spectrum is that they need everything like perfectly structured and figured out. And that is kind of problematic. I'm not saying lack structure in your life. I'm not saying that. This is not the kind of certainty I want you to remove. In fact, planning stuff is absolutely great, and it's very helpful and useful. And other people should really take an example on that. But I mean a different kind of certainty. The certainty of like, yeah, will I manage to go through it? And like, is this person going to be helpful or something? Sometimes you just have to do. Think less, do more. And sometimes we need to wonder, are we really working on it? Or are we just preparing every day without doing anything? I used to be the kind of person who wanted to prepare everything and then work on it. It's the reason that despite starting having to have mental health issues aged 15, and despite realizing what's going wrong in my family since I was 16, since about the time I was turning 16, I was already starting to realize the first few things that went wrong with my family. I wasn't realizing it completely, but a bit. And I was like, yeah, I'm not sure, and what if maybe this is the case and this? It was like overthinking and always trying to find an excuse for not changing my outer circumstances. There was this part of me resisting change because it feared that if I changed, I would no longer be me. And if you have such a part in your mind, that is the ego. Don't trust it. Get rid of it and tell it, hey, shut up. And I don't know. It is exactly that. This having it's the self-image. And what happens when you have the self-image that you try to keep in front of other people, in front of yourself? You develop the alter ego phenomenon. Let's take, I think many of you might be still familiar with like the traditional hero comics. I don't know. I'm not sure, but oftentimes it's like these heroes are like, have like a private life. But then when they are in public life, like doing their hero stuff, they're like suddenly wearing a mask. That's you. You are wearing a mask. You're just constantly having this alter ego. And that phenomenon is long known. What many people don't realize is it applies to real people too. We are wearing such a mask, and let me ask you, how can you be an honest and believable and trusted hero or like helpful person? Because ultimately it's not about heroism, it's about being helpful and useful in society. We have to realize, you have to wonder, how much of a good person can we be if we are only being good through our alter ego? We aren't good at all. It shows nothing about us. It only shows something about this image that comes with the intention of being accepted and loved and appreciated. This is selfish. Having an image in front of other people is selfish, because you're saying, hey, love me or else I don't give you the freedom to think about me what you want. Like, it's like the irony is, we all want to be free and have free speech and everything, but then we tell other people, hey, but think of me positively or else. We can't live life like that. Magnets don't attract everything. They will repel equally much. You have to deal with it. And the problem is we're conditioned to think that if we aren't loved, we are being threatened. Not being loved is a threat. And this is the conditioning that comes with bad and hierarchical parenting. Traditional parenting is exactly like this. Hey, you are loved, now be grateful for me. Many parents are like this. My parents are like this. They're like, hey, love me for loving you. I demand that it goes the other way around too. Instead of saying, I love you, and it just comes from myself, and the love in the other direction comes by itself, on its own, naturally. Instead, many parents say, hey, I'm so desperate to be loved. Please love me, child. And I'll love you back. This is the most unhealthy way you can parent, possibly. The most unhealthy way to possibly parent ever. The most toxic parenting ever. And if you're doing this, if you catch yourself doing this, change this instant. For your child's sake, for their sanity. Change in an instant. Now, this is the conditioning. This fear of vulnerability. Hey, if I'm not liked, if people see the flaws in me, then they will hate me, make fun of me, and bully me, which unfortunately is true. People will do that, but it says nothing about you. This is what we're made to believe, because at the time we're too young to think otherwise. This is the thing that happened with me when I was between 10 and 12. It was this exact problem. I assumed that the bullying of these people towards me was some statement about who I was. No, this is not a statement about who I am. And the problem was, I was removing too many parts of me. I was deleting them and putting them into the trash bin. The good thing about a trash bin is things never get permanently deleted. You can retrieve them back. They will come stinking, and this is also what it feels like to reconnect with other parts of you initially. It will stink. But you can just take a shower and suddenly you will have nothing against that part of you. What we need to start doing is clean these parts of us that we've left rotting for so long, and then wearing these things with pride. Not the kind of pride of, yeah, look at how great I am of a person. Not having pride is not the same as having ego. Having pride means, hey, I have value too. I have inherent dignity, and I'm proud of being me. You can do this. This is not toxic. This is self-love. And not the kind of self-love that, this part was a bit a confusion factor. When speaking of narcissistic people, there is also the term self-love. But in that context, it means this, being drowned in the self and in, oh, I'm so great, and it's like being stuck in this, with these pink glasses towards oneself. This, by the way, was unfortunately what I did to myself. Where I was like the socialized person, the helpful one, the smart one, the nerdy one, and whatnot, and the know-it-all, and I was like, yeah, that's me, and it's absolutely great, and I was like drowning in myself. I was drowning. And this is really the main problem of why, when our worldview shatters, so do we. Because the view we have of ourselves is just as fake as our worldview more often than not. And when we shatter everything, when we question everything, it is especially challenging to question what you supposedly know about yourself. You have to deal with the fact that you don't know yourself at all. I don't know myself. I have no idea about myself. I'm just trying around stuff. Why do you think did I have such a hard time sticking to a profile picture? By the way, for those who know me from scratch, I was like changing my profile picture every like week or month or 2 months or something like that, because I had no identity. I could identify with nothing. And the unfortunate thing is, the thing that makes being conditioned so sad is that you remember what it was like not to be affected by the conditioning. I remember primary school. Back when I didn't give a thing on what other people think. And the thing is, I was so free. And I didn't care, and I wasn't in danger for being myself. Why do I feel that now that I'm older and more resilient? Why now? If not back then. Why? Because as adults we worry too much about, I must be mature and be adulty and serious. No. There exists no strict barrier between adult and non-adult. You don't turn into an adult the very moment you turn 18, and you're not 100% a non-adult beforehand. It's a flow, like a river. You can't really cut it in two and say, hey, this is adult, this is everything before it. And even if, why as adults do we have to lose the things that make life so pleasant, which is being joyful and creative and outgoing? Why do we have to lose that? Why do you have to become this serious, and like, look how adult I am, so serious. It's kind of like the picture that many people would draw of a soldier. Like, man, life is so harsh and everything so bad, and I'm always mouth pointing down and to everything I would say no. This is not the way to be an adult. This is not even mature. This is the most stupid thing ever. Be as childish as you were before, even as an adult. Because really, adults are nothing but grown children. We never have anything figured out. Adults are no different from children. Something we don't have figured out. Sometimes we act out of impulse and stupidly. It happens because we are all learning. On a different layer perhaps, but it's the same thing. We're still learning. And we never stop. Even as an elderly, it's the same as, like, look. You must imagine, back when the internet was, and the digital devices were relatively new. Yeah, the elderly had no idea about this. They had to learn. They had to learn, okay, how do I deal with that? And they had an especially hard time because of age, simply. And do you think these elderly are immature for still having to figure that out? No. They are learning. It just came new. It's fresh. Of course they have to learn it first. Just like everyone else. And this is kind of what opened my eyes. That children have some traits that we usually only associate with adults, and the other way around, adults will also maintain traits that we usually only assign to children. It is the myth of age, the myth of childhood and adulthood. It's just an illusion. There is no such thing. And if this is one of your struggles with suicidal thoughts, where you're like, yeah, I'm not evolving, and like, I'm still so childish, it's not worth it, then take this piece of advice. Because as an adult, you're no different from a child. Except for the fact that you've lived longer and have a few more experiences. And by the way, experiences can hinder us too. It's called trauma. It's called bias. It's called comfort zone. Yeah, experience isn't a purely good thing. Sometimes being less experienced is actually the better way to go. And there is this story. I don't remember where I've seen it. If anyone has a source, please provide me with it. It's just at the back of my mind right now. There was a time where there was like a university lecture. That is like a story that actually happened in like the 1990s or something. I don't know. There was a lecture, and a student came late. It wasn't their custom to be late, but they're hurrying up and everything, and they just barely weren't able to enter anymore, because in university, if you're just a minute late, yeah, you approach a closed door, you can't enter. Yeah, better luck next time. Um, which is why it's important to be there notably earlier, so in case you're a bit late, you're still in time, basically. But anyways, it was a math lecture, and like I think economics or something, and the professor was saying like, yeah, these problems are like especially hard and so on and unsolved, and it was like on the chalkboard, and at some point that student went to that room. It was empty but open by mere chance, and the student saw these problems on the chalkboard, and not knowing about anything that was said in the lecture, the student assumed that that was the homework to do. And so that student just did the homework, the supposed homework, which was really a literal unsolved problem in math, and just did it in a breeze somehow. And when he sent it that to the professor, he was even like apologizing, like, yeah, I'm sorry I wasn't to the lecture, I didn't make it, and here is the homework. I hope that is enough. And of course, like, because the student like didn't know he was just doing an incredible thing, and the professor was like, wait, that's not the homework I gave, but that's absolutely awesome. Hey, that's even better. Hey, here you go. That's more than an apology. And that story, what do we take from it? I think that too often we praise experience. Like, we have this image of like, why these wise old people who have like their pieces of wisdom, but we need a balance between youth and wisdom, because wisdom can only help as far as it can apply to the world as it is constantly changing. And the youth is there to point out what changes are happening and how things should very likely be changed. And we need both. And I find it toxic when, like, especially in cultures where family structures are typically large, such as Spanish-speaking families, or also in Asia you can find this a lot, where you have like these big families, and you have this toxic idea of you're young, you're nothing. Essentially, that if you're younger than someone else, then you are basically less worth than that older person, because wisdom is so highly praised, which isn't very accurate to reality. Wisdom isn't all there is to knowledge and approaching the problems of the world that the world is facing at any given moment. That is not the way to go. And this is experience is praised too much. And if you are also suicidal because of, I don't have the experience and I can't make it because I have, I don't know, maybe, let me just make an example. Yeah, I have social anxiety and I can relate social to people. I'll never make the experience other people make of being appreciated by people and loved and cared about. Oh man, how should I live? Might as well die. Many people are like that. There was a part of me that was like this too, by the way. Until I dealt with the fact that I will be alone for a long time. Especially because of trust issues. This is a story for another time. I have covered that previously, but actually, going back to this math student story, essentially, why was the student able to solve it so rapidly? Because they weren't told that the problem was unsolved or like hard. The student had the motivation and they had like the perfect prerequisites, the perfect circumstances for solving it with full motivation. We need to approach things less with it's serious and if it fails it's so terrible, and more with just the joy of doing it, the fun, the process. And this is something that I think our society is lacking a lot. The appreciation for the path we go rather than just where we are standing at the moment. Observe the development. I mean, look, I can be as far ahead, I can be ahead of other people as much as I want at a given point in time. If it demotivates me from moving forward because it would be additional unnecessary work, then really I'm just standing still. And this is why it's important to appreciate the process, not just the goal or the supposed goal, because the path never ends, but the path. The path is the only thing there is. There is no end. This is another such illusion. Once I have this and this and that, then my journey is complete, my path is over, and I can rest in peace. No, not true. Life is never ending. The path never ends. Never. And look, even if it did, you've very likely done many choices, and you can step back and take choices differently and see where it takes you then. I mean, even if. Like, even if I was wrong with the statement that these paths didn't end, it doesn't change the fact that it never ends. Ultimately, the journey never ends. May it be because the paths are long, or because there's so many, or both. It doesn't really matter. And it's really hard to admit that I'm not a great person. It's hard to deal with the fact that I've changed, and that I am changing. It's hard to deal with the fact that I'm not really sure what to believe, what to think anymore. I mean, I don't want to believe anything anymore. Like, belief is dead for me. Just to be clear, belief is dead. It applies to social conditioning, parental conditioning. It applies to ideologies and ideals and whatnot. I'm beyond that. Perhaps, maybe, I don't know. Or at least I want to be. I want to consider, okay, the only basis for my ethic is the fact that we're human and its immediate implications. And then I go from there. And I managed to conclude a lot of things. Turns out that a lot of my argumentation is based on beliefs from my past. For instance, in Term 5, I talked about how I realized for the first time in ages that power isn't always bad. Because I was like, I even defined power to be an inherently negative word. Like, if someone has power, then yeah, they are being manipulative, controlling, and demanding, and pushing up people beneath them. Because, let's be real, this is the image we receive the most from ruling people. It may be true, doesn't mean that power itself is a bad thing. It just means that it's implemented poorly. And I realized my power, my ability to change, because really power is nothing but an ability, my ability to help other people, be kind, to forgive them and to care about them is a good power. It's great. And I think I still have many limiting beliefs left to uncover. This is why I need a psychologist to go through all this stuff, the junk, the mess in my head. And my journey isn't even done yet. Like, my mental health journey in particular isn't done. It may never be finished. I kind of feel the dread that I may forever have to deal with my mental health. But maybe that's just how it is. And let me remind you, having mental health issues doesn't make you less of a person. And with that thing, I've said everything there is to say about my ego and power and please not to kill yourself, and so on and so forth. I think I said it all. And as I'm speaking, by the way, I notice how I'm lifting off a lot of weight from me. And it's great. I don't know, you know what, let me just end this thing, yeah, right? See you, and don't forget to take deep breaths, and don't forget my advice. I can only recommend to watch the other parts. They have more advice that might apply to you. So go ahead. Do your thing, resolve your issues, and be happy and healthy and alive again. Peace.